No shouting, no insults, no raised voices, just two chairs, two microphones, and a silence that would end a royal narrative forever. Prince Harry walked into the studio, believing this was another chance to explain himself. James O'Brien sat across from him, knowing something Harry didn't. This wasn't an interview, it was a mirror, and once the questions began, there would be no way to look away. The studio was colder than Harry expected. Not physically, though the air conditioning hummed with an almost clinical precision, but emotionally. There were no audience murmurs, no warm applause, no familiar studio laughter to soften the edges. Just two chairs angled slightly inward, a small wooden table between them, and the quiet red glow of recording lights. Prince Harry adjusted his jacket as he sat down. Gray suit, open collar, intentional restraint. He had learned the visual language of the seriousness well over the years. This was the version of himself the public trusted, or at least used to. Across from him, James O'Brien didn't rush. He never did. James glanced down at his notes, not to read them, but to give Harry something rare in interviews. Space. Space to fill. Space to reveal. "Thank you for being here," James said calmly, lifting his eyes. "I know this format is quieter than what you're used to." Harry smiled politely. "I actually prefer it," he replied. "It allows for real conversation." James nodded. "Good, then let's have one." The microphones captured everything. The faint breath Harry took before settling back, the soft tap of James's pen against his notebook. James leaned back slightly. "I'd like to start simply," he said. "When you left royal life, did you feel like you were choosing freedom or losing something?" Harry didn't answer immediately. That pause, just half a second too long, was the first crack. "I think," Harry began carefully, "it was about protecting my family, about mental health, about stepping away from something that had become toxic." James listened without interruption. He didn't nod, he didn't challenge, he waited. Harry continued. "There's this assumption that privilege insulates you from pain, that if you're born into something, you're not allowed to suffer." James tilted his head slightly. "Do you believe suffering is measured by contrast?" Harry frowned. "I believe suffering is suffering." "Of course," James replied evenly. "But context still exists, doesn't it?" Harry shifted in his chair, the first physical sign of resistance. James went on, his voice steady. "You've spoken often about being misunderstood, about your story being misrepresented. I'm curious, do you think there's any part of your story that is understood correctly?" Harry exhaled. "Very little of it." James scribbled something down, then looked up again. "That must feel incredibly isolating." Harry seized the opening. "It is. And that's why platforms like this matter. Because the media has framed me in ways that—" James gently raised a finger, not to interrupt, but to guide. "When you say the media," he said, "do you include the platforms you chose? The interviews, the book, the documentaries?" Harry's jaw tightened, just slightly. "I chose to speak," he replied, "because silence was killing us." James nodded once. "Silence can be destructive, but so can repetition." Harry blinked. "Repetition?" "Yes," James said. "Repetition of grievance, repetition of explanation, repetition of harm, especially when others don't have the same platform to respond." For the first time, Harry looked directly at James, not as a host, but as an opponent. "I didn't come here to be accused," Harry said. James didn't flinch. "I'm not accusing you. I'm asking you to consider something." Harry crossed his arms loosely, defensive, but not closed. James leaned forward now, not aggressively, intentionally. "You've spoken about stepping away from privilege, but privilege doesn't disappear, does it? It transforms." Harry's voice hardened. "Are you saying I should be grateful for trauma?" "No," James replied instantly. "I'm asking whether you believe stepping away from power is the same as losing it." The studio fell silent. Harry opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked down briefly, collecting his thoughts. "I think," he said finally, "that when you're inside the system, you don't realize how trapped you are." James nodded slowly. "That may be true." He paused. "Do you accept," James continued, "that from the outside, It can look less like escape and more like control. Harry's smile vanished. The red recording light stayed on. And for the first time, Prince Harry realized this conversation was not going where he expected. James O'Brien didn't rush to fill the silence. That was his advantage. Most interviewers feared dead air. They hurried to soften it, to apologize for it, to rescue the guest from their own thoughts. James let it sit, let it grow teeth. Prince Harry cleared his throat. "I think," he said, choosing each word with care, "that when people speak about control, they often misunderstand how little agency I actually had." James nodded. "That's an important point." Harry leaned into it. Every move, every relationship, every mistake. It was all scrutinized. I didn't even own my own narrative. James folded his hands. "And now?" Harry hesitated. "Now I do." James tilted his head. "Do you?" Harry looked up sharply. "Of course. I've told my story." "Yes," James said calmly. "Many times, across many platforms, to many millions." Harry's jaw tightened again. "Because people weren't listening." James didn't argue. He reframed. "Let me ask it this way," he said. "When does explaining yourself become defining yourself?" Harry blinked. "I don't understand." James leaned back slightly, maintaining eye contact. "You've become synonymous with explanation, with clarification, with correction. Do you ever worry that the constant need to be understood is actually keeping you trapped in the very system you say you escaped?" Harry shifted in his seat, uncrossing his arms, then crossing them again differently, subtle, defensive. "No," he replied. "I worry more about silence being interpreted as guilt." James nodded. "That's reasonable." He paused. "Do you think," James continued, "that silence might sometimes be interpreted as restraint?" Harry laughed, once short and humorless. "Restraint wasn't exactly encouraged where I came from." James smiled faintly. "True. But accountability wasn't discouraged either, was it?" Harry's eyes flickered. "I've taken accountability," Harry said firmly, "for my mistakes, for my behavior." James didn't challenge the statement directly. He let it stand, then circled it. "You've spoken about accountability in very personal terms," he said. "Therapy, growth, reflection, all important. But accountability is also relational, isn't it? It involves the people affected by our actions." Harry stiffened. "Are you suggesting I haven't considered others?" "I'm asking," James replied evenly, "whether your version of accountability includes people who disagree with you." The temperature in the room shifted. Harry leaned forward now, elbows on his knees. "Disagreement is one thing, character assassination is another." James nodded slowly. "Agreed." He glanced at his notes for the first time since the conversation began. "You've described members of your family as trapped, complicit, or indifferent," James said. "Yet they've largely chosen not to respond in kind. Do you see that as weakness or discipline?" Harry's lips parted, then pressed together. "They have an institution protecting them," Harry said. "I didn't." James looked up. "You had a global platform." Harry snapped back quickly. "Not one I controlled." James didn't raise his voice. He didn't interrupt. He waited. Harry exhaled, frustration leaking through. "You're framing this as if I was some sort of aggressor." James shook his head slightly. "No, I'm framing this as consequence." Harry's eyes narrowed. "That's not fair." James leaned forward again, just an inch. "Fairness isn't the same as comfort." The words landed heavier than any accusation. Harry leaned back, crossing his legs now, a subtle attempt to reclaim composure. "I came here expecting a conversation, not a cross-examination." James nodded. "And I promised you one." He paused, letting the moment breathe. "Conversations," James continued, "become difficult when one person believes their pain should end the discussion." Harry stared at him. "Are you saying my pain is inconvenient?" "No," James said gently. "I'm saying it's not exclusive." Harry's hands clenched together. "For someone who claims to care deeply about mental health," James added, "do you worry that your public framing of suffering creates a hierarchy of pain?" Harry shook his head. "Pain isn't a competition." "Then why?" James asked softly. "Does it sometimes sound like a justification?" Silence again. Longer this time. Harry looked down at the table, at the coffee cups. at the faint reflection of the studio lights. "You don't know what it's like," Harry said quietly. James didn't flinch. "You're right." He paused. "But neither does the public. They only know what you show them." Harry looked up, eyes sharp. "And what exactly am I showing them?" James met his gaze. A man still fighting the same battle, only now without an enemy willing to fight back. Harry inhaled sharply through his nose. "That's not true," he said. "They're fighting me every day." James shook his head. "They're ignoring you." The words hit harder than anger ever could. Harry sat frozen. The microphones hummed. And for the first time, the idea crept in, uninvited, uncomfortable. What if the silence wasn't persecution, but closure? Harry didn't answer right away. He stared at James as if the sentence had been an insult rather than an observation. "They're ignoring you." It sounded worse than "they hate you." Hate meant you mattered. Ignore meant you were background noise. His throat worked like he was swallowing something bitter. "You think they're ignoring me," Harry said slowly, voice controlled, "because you don't see what happens behind closed doors." James held the same calm posture. "Then show me," without the metaphors. Harry's eyes flashed. "You want specifics?" "I want reality," James replied. "And if reality is harmful, then name the harm clearly. Who is doing what, and to whom?" The studio felt smaller now, as if the walls had leaned in. Harry gave a short, sharp laugh. "That's rich." James didn't move. "Is it?" Harry's fingers tapped once on his knee, an unconscious tell. Then he leaned forward. "You're asking me to do something they've never done," Harry said. "They've never spoken plainly. They've never been accountable. They hide behind protocol, behind palace language." James lifted a hand, polite, not aggressive. "But you're not there anymore." Harry froze for half a beat. James continued, still soft. "So why are you still talking like you are?" The question didn't sound dramatic. It sounded clinical. Harry's shoulders rose slightly. His eyes narrowed. "Because the damage doesn't vanish when you leave." James nodded. "Agreed, damage lingers." He paused, then delivered the next line like he was reading a label. "Do you think your interviews help it heal, or keep it bleeding?" Harry's face tightened. "I'm not bleeding for entertainment." James's eyebrows lifted. "Then why is your pain always scheduled?" The words landed with a brutal neatness. Harry's jaw flexed. He sat back, then forward again, like his body couldn't decide whether to retreat or attack. "You're twisting it," Harry said. "You're turning this into a pattern," James offered. Harry blinked, caught. "Into a narrative that fits your audience." James nodded once, acknowledging the point. "Yes, that's what I do." He held Harry's gaze. "But you do it too." Harry's expression changed, less defensive, more offended. "I'm telling my truth." James smiled faintly, not unkind. "Your truth is not a shield." Harry's lips parted. He looked like he might interrupt, but James didn't rush. He let Harry choose the next move. Harry chose anger. "You know what's unbelievable?" Harry snapped. "People like you. People who profit off questioning whether someone's trauma is real enough." James's face didn't harden, but his eyes sharpened. "I haven't questioned whether your trauma is real," he said. "I've questioned whether your strategy is." Harry threw his hands slightly outward, palms up. "Strategy? Are you serious?" James nodded. "I am." Harry leaned toward him. "So, what's the strategy then? Tell me, since you're the expert." James didn't smile. "To remain the protagonist." Harry went still. James continued. "When you're the protagonist, the world is always the antagonist. Your critics are villains. Your relatives are symbols. Your choices become reactions. And any question that threatens that structure becomes unfair." Harry's face reddened just slightly. "That is, honestly, uncomfortable," James finished. Harry's voice rose. "It's dishonest." James' voice stayed at the same volume. "Then correct it." Harry blinked. "What?" James leaned forward, just a fraction, like a closing argument in slow motion. "Correct it," he repeated. "Name your biggest mistake, not theirs, yours. One clear sentence, no context, no but, no because. Just the mistake." The room went dead. Even the air conditioner felt loud. Harry stared at James like he'd been asked to confess in court. "That's a ridiculous demand," Harry said, voice tight. James nodded. "Maybe." He waited. "But it's also an easy one," he added, "if accountability is what you're selling." Harry's hand went to his chest, an instinctive gesture, defensive and personal. "You're making this performative." James didn't budge. "You've built your public identity around performance of vulnerability." Harry's eyes widened. "How dare you!" James's tone stayed even, almost disappointed. "That, right there, that's the line." Harry stared. "What line?" James's gaze didn't blink. "The moment someone stops being a person to you and becomes a threat." Harry's mouth opened, then closed. A muscle jumped in his cheek. "I've been attacked for years," Harry said, voice higher now. "You think I'm going to sit here and—" James interrupted gently for the first time. "You're not being attacked right now?" Harry paused, breathing harder. James continued. "You're being asked." Harry's eyes darted to the side, toward the crew, the lights, the unseen producer. His leg bounced once, then stilled. He looked back at James. "Fine," Harry said, forced calm. "My biggest mistake—" James nodded once. "One sentence." Harry's lips tightened, a long exhale. "My biggest mistake," Harry said, voice clipped, "was believing that people like you ever wanted the truth." The sentence hung there, sharp, clean, designed to cut. James didn't react the way Harry expected. He didn't get offended. He didn't clap back. He only nodded slowly. "That," James said quietly, "is not a mistake. It's an accusation." Harry leaned forward, voice rising. "Because you are accusing me." James kept his gaze steady. "No." He paused. "I'm describing you." Harry's face changed, something between rage and disbelief. His hands clenched, then relaxed, then clenched again. James' voice stayed calm, but the words sharpened. "You want the world to understand you," he said, "but you punish it every time it tries." Harry's chair creaked as he pushed back an inch. For the first time, it looked like he might stand. And James, still seated, still calm, dropped the final match into the gasoline. "Would you like a break?" he asked. "Or would you like to walk out like you've walked out of every conversation that stops applauding?" Harry's eyes went wide. The mask didn't slip. It cracked. Harry stood up so suddenly that the chair scraped loudly against the studio floor. The sound cut through the room like a snapped wire. For a split second, no one spoke. James didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even lean back. He simply looked up at Harry, calm, steady, almost tired. "So, that's a no," James said quietly. Harry's breathing was visible now. His chest rose and fell under the tailored suit, the practiced composure finally gone. "You know exactly what you're doing," Harry snapped. "This is a setup." James tilted his head slightly. "Every conversation feels like a setup when you arrive needing control." Harry pointed toward him. "You invited me here under the pretense of honesty." James nodded. "And I gave you honesty." Harry laughed, sharp and humorless. "No, you gave me judgment." James's reply was immediate. "No, I gave you a mirror." The word landed harder than any insult. Harry looked around the studio, at the lights, the microphones, the silent crew, who suddenly seemed very interested in their notes. For the first time, he realized there was no ally in the room, no sympathetic nods, no rescue line, only silence. "You people always do this," Harry said, voice raised now. "You push and push until—" "Until you leave," James finished calmly. Harry froze. James continued, voice still measured. "You've walked out of palaces, press offices, families, institutions, and now conversations. At some point, it stops being everyone else." Harry's face flushed. "I won't sit here and be psychoanalyzed." James nodded once. "Then don't." He gestured gently toward the door, not dismissive, not triumphant, just factual. "But don't confuse walking away with winning." Harry stared at him, stunned, not by anger now, but by something worse, irrelevance. "You'll regret this," Harry said, grabbing his jacket from the back of the chair. James didn't respond immediately. Then, softly, "I don't think I will." Harry took 2 steps, then stopped, turned back. "For the record," Harry said tightly, "history will judge all of you." James met his eyes one last time. History judges patterns. That was it. Harry walked off set. No dramatic pause, no final speech, just the sound of footsteps fading into the hallway. The door closed. The studio remained silent for several seconds. James exhaled, glanced briefly at the empty chair, then back to the camera. "For anyone watching," he said calmly, "that wasn't an ambush. That was a boundary." He folded his notes. "And boundaries," he added, "are only offensive to people who rely on none." The red light went off. Within minutes, the clip would be everywhere, not because Harry left, but because, for once, he wasn't chased. If this confrontation made you uncomfortable, good. That means the questions mattered. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think really won this exchange? And if you want more unfiltered confrontations, tense interviews, and moments they didn't expect to go viral, like the video, subscribe to the channel, because the most revealing moments usually happen right before someone walks out.